Hello and welcome to Tavern Chat. It's the vidcast, it's the podcast, it's the castcast. It's all the cast. I am Eric Tankari, bartender in the OSR. So today, I thought I'd talk a little bit. It's a subject that came up because of an article I read on Bell of Lost Souls, and it's about one of the authors of the Candlekeep Mysteries, which is a bunch of short adventures. And already that one was the one I believe where they had the wheelchair accessible dungeon and had a whole brouhaha about that. It has nothing to do with that. There's another author from uh, that piece of work, excuse me, has asked for their name to be removed from any future printings, claiming that Wizards of the Coast changed their original work to the point that it's unrecognizable to them. And the author in this is Graham Barber, apparently better known as POC Gamer or Panzerlion on the blog or comment online. They have their own blog, and I did look at it briefly. So their adventure was the Book of Cylinders. And what happened is they submitted it. It went through playtesting. There were some initial changes that requested they did. Then they did more playtesting. And Wizards of the Coast editorial staff decided to make some significant changes to the adventure. But he got paid for submitting it. He got paid for his work. Now, what did they change? Well, one of the things that he complains about is they changed. Oh God, what do they call the frog folk? The Grippy, the Gripply. They were. He had this whole culture dealing with them, and they cut it down to they were just primitive frog folk now, with no place in the Lords of Forgotten Realms. And here's the thing. Okay, this is from him. This is from him on his on Twitter. I see the bones of my adventure in it, but it's incomplete. The descriptive language is stuff that I fought against. My developed, interesting Gripply are just primitive frog folk now, with no place in the Lords of Forgotten Realm. If you're wondering what the scale of the shift is, the entire plot is gone. All the motivations, ramifications, everything. And here's the thing, okay? He talks about, they use the word primitive, and he's fought against that word. I don't really think that the word primitive is what's upsetting him as much as he was writing this to be an integral part of the Forgotten Realms. He was using Forgotten Realms lore and building upon it, and he was apparently making a pretty in-depth history for this short adventure of about, I don't know, about 7,000 words. And what it came down to is that Wizards of the Coast decided that it was probably too much fluff. So they took out all his backstory and they simplified it down to an adventure that they could use. So yes, they took his story, but they stripped out all the background stuff. Now here's the thing. That background stuff is very important if you're running your own campaign, certainly. Or if this is being included in a series of adventures that are deep in a campaign. But from what they're saying here is that Wizards of the Coast wanted something that would, excuse me again, would fit better into people's home campaigns, which might not necessarily be Forgotten Realms. So therefore, this superfluous background material was a waste of space, really. And it says here that in the original adventure, the Book of Cylinders would connect the deep histories of the Forgotten Realms to the current day. So, including the Yuan-Ti culture. Again, interesting stuff. Would I like to have read it? You know what? That sounds like it could be system neutral to a large extent. Great. But here's the deal. If you want to build upon somebody else's IP, unless they're telling you, yes, go ahead and build upon it, you get to work within it. You're working within their constraints. They're not looking for you to add to their IP. They're looking for you to make stuff to use with their IP, unless you're told otherwise. That's the difference. He decided he wanted to do something else and make his stamp. And that is not what happened. Let's see. What is he? What else did he say on Twitter? Suddenly things make sense to a degree. Last summer, after the Orion incident, Orion wrote that working at Wizards was hard because the upper staff there had a specific idea of what D&D is and worked to maintain that to the point that it becomes a detriment to expansion. Again, you're not being employed to add to the IP. You're being employed to use the IP. Okay? And not just expansion, but creativity and development. Because at the end of the day, things have to be D&D, and that D&D has to match the D&D they know. What is wrong with that? You're playing in somebody else's sandbox. If you want to create, right? If you want to say, hey, I want to write something that is historical and world changing and people are going to remember it, then write your own shit. I'm sorry. And you're complaining that Wizards of the Coast doesn't want you redefining what D&D is. They don't want you coming in and changing the setting. They don't want you coming in and changing the races. They don't want you coming in and changing what the expectations are. Forgotten Realms is iconic, right? You're going to go in and make changes. And maybe those changes work great in your own campaign. But if you want to write something on that level of world influencing, changing, redefining, or defining in the first place, write it for your own IP. Write it for yourself. That's where that work should be going into. Don't complain that I wrote all this stuff and then Wizards took it out and they still published it, but they didn't have my vision. Well, guess what? You went off the reservation. You did. You went beyond the parameters. I'm not saying that Wizards expects you to stay within the rails, but I think a better terminology might be Wizards expects their freelancers to stay within the sandbox, not redefine the sandbox. And in this case, POC Gamer was trying to redefine the sandbox, add elements to it that weren't there, and that was, yes, too much of a change. He's also apparently upset that others got more expansive feedback from the editorial staff, which the editorial staff said they were under no obligation to do so. And he got paid for it. When you work under contract, that's part of the price that you pay. You're not necessarily going to have the work that you submitted come out looking like the work that you submitted. You know, D&D is not yours. It's not mine. It belongs to Wizards of the Coast, and it's defined by management. And if they decide suddenly to go, hey, we're going to blow up Forgotten Realms, or we're going to do another Time of Troubles and completely redefine what the Forgotten Realms is, and you get brought aboard for that, guess what? You're going to be given a parameters of what you can and cannot add or cannot remove. And maybe you'll have an opportunity to push the envelope. I can get shot down. But this wasn't even the case. This is the case that you were hired to write an adventure, and you decided that you wanted to do world building in it. And it wasn't what Wizards of the Coast wanted or needed out of you. So they cut that part out of your adventure. I understand. I kind of feel your pain. But again, if you want to do something, work on that kind of a level, work on your own IP. Seriously. That's the only way you can have the control that you want, you feel you need. Folks, if you are listening on Anchor, you can leave a voicemail. Otherwise, you don't have to use the Anchor app. You can call 347-509-5168. Leave a voicemail. I listen to them all. I try to get all of them on the air, assuming that you want it to be aired. We're still in the midst of the world of COVID, so all I ask of you is to use your common sense to keep yourself, your family, your friends, your loved ones healthy and safe. Be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Knock on wood. I shall be back again tomorrow. And if you like what you're listening to and you're watching on YouTube, or even if you're listening on Anchor or one of the other podcasts catchers. In that case, go to YouTube. Go to YouTube / Tenkars Tavern. Eric Tenkar. Duh, I should have had a V8. How could I forget that? / Eric Tenkar and subscribe. Really, it helps. Live audiences, when we do our live cast, are amazingly special and make for a better cast. All right, folks, on that note, I'm out of here.